The bustling John F. Kennedy Airport in New York City was a whirlwind of travelers. Families hurried to catch their flights, business people shuffled through emails on their phones, and children tugged at their parents' hands in excitement. Among the crowd stood Marcus Greene, a tall, broad-shouldered black man with a calm, commanding presence. His gray beard was neatly trimmed, and his eyes had the look of a man who had seen it all. Dressed in a simple leather jacket, jeans, and a black veteran's cap, Marcus was a man of quiet dignity, a decorated war hero from tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. As he approached the gate for his flight to Washington, D.C., Marcus could feel the curious stares. He was used to them. At 6 feet 4 inches and built like a linebacker, he often stood out. He'd gotten used to the way people sized him up, sometimes with admiration, often with suspicion. Still, he kept his head high and his steps steady. He handed his boarding pass to the gate agent, a young woman who barely glanced at him before swiping it through the scanner. A loud beep rang out. Denial. "Hold on, sir," she said, her voice clipped. "There's an issue with your boarding pass." Marcus frowned but nodded, stepping aside as she gestured for him to wait. He glanced at the clock. His flight was set to board in 20 minutes. There should be no problem. He'd booked his ticket days ago, even opting for an early check-in. Minutes passed. Other passengers were allowed through the gate, but the agent avoided eye contact with Marcus, whispering to her colleague instead. Marcus noticed other passengers looking at him, murmuring as if they recognized some invisible red flag. Finally, the agent returned, a new expression on her face, one of skepticism. "Sir," she began, glancing down at her computer screen, "we're going to need you to step aside for additional screening. You've been flagged by TSA." Marcus felt his stomach drop. He'd heard of situations like this before. Stories of black men being randomly flagged or questioned with no clear explanation. His gut told him this wasn't about security. "I'm a veteran," Marcus said quietly, showing her his veteran's ID. "I served my country for 20 years. There shouldn't be any issues." The agent hesitated but didn't budge. "Please step aside, sir." Sighing, Marcus complied. He stood near the security checkpoint as a TSA officer approached, his demeanor stiff and formal. "Can I help you, sir?" the officer asked, eyes scrutinizing Marcus. "I don't know," Marcus replied, his voice calm but firm. "I was just trying to board my flight." Apparently, there's some confusion. The officer's eyes scanned Marcus's ID, his eyebrows raising slightly when he read the name. Marcus Greene. "I've heard that name before." Marcus said nothing, allowing the weight of his silence to speak for him. The officer glanced at the boarding agent, who looked uneasy. Whispers traveled quickly among the passengers waiting nearby, many of them leaning in to see what would happen next. The tension in the air was palpable, thick enough to cut with a knife. A supervisor soon arrived, flipping through paperwork and glancing nervously at Marcus. He spoke quietly to the gate agent, then turned to Marcus with an apologetic smile. "Mr. Greene," the supervisor began, "we apologize for the inconvenience, but we need to verify a few things before we can allow you to board. It's just standard protocol." Marcus narrowed his eyes. "Standard protocol for whom? You think because I'm a black man, I must be a threat? I've been to war zones, seen things you wouldn't believe, and now I can't even board a plane in my own country?" His voice remained steady, but his words stung, cutting through the room's nervous energy. The passengers nearby had gone silent, watching intently. Several pulled out their phones, recording the unfolding scene. Marcus noticed but didn't flinch. Let them see, he thought. Let them see how this country treats the men and women who've given everything for it. Just then, a man in a suit, clearly someone important, rushed toward the gate, his face flushed with urgency. "Wait," he called out, pushing through the crowd. He reached Marcus, breathless, and extended a hand. "Mr. Greene," the man said, his voice almost reverent. "I'm terribly sorry for the misunderstanding. There's been a huge mistake." Marcus raised an eyebrow, not shaking the man's hand. "And you are?" "I'm Robert Hines, with the Department of Veterans Affairs," the man said quickly, pulling out a government ID. "We were informed of this situation." "Sir, you're a national hero." The words hung in the air, heavy with realization. People began whispering again. this time with shock and awe. Several passengers gasped, recognizing Marcus's name now. The Marcus Greene, a Medal of Honor recipient, known for single-handedly saving his platoon during a deadly ambush overseas. He was a war hero, an icon in the veteran community, and had received national recognition years ago. The TSA officer stepped back, looking embarrassed. The gate agent's face had turned ghost white, realizing the gravity of her mistake. Hines turned to the crowd, addressing them with a tone of respect. Mr. Greene is not only a veteran, but one of the most decorated servicemen in this country's history. We owe him a debt we can never repay. Marcus remained silent, his eyes scanning the faces around him. Some were filled with admiration, others with shame. But the damage had been done. He nodded slightly to Hines, then turned back to the gate agent. "Can I board now?" he asked, his voice low but filled with authority. The agent stammered, "Why yes, of course, sir. We're so sorry for the confusion." Marcus took his boarding pass, straightened his veteran's cap, and walked toward the gate. As he passed the crowd, people began to clap, first a few, then many more. It wasn't the loud, joyous applause of a sporting event, but a slow, respectful recognition of who this man was and what he had done. Marcus didn't acknowledge it, walking through the gate with the same quiet dignity he'd arrived with. As he settled into his seat, Marcus exhaled deeply. He was used to fighting battles. But this one, in the country he had served, always hurt the most. He looked out the window as the plane prepared for takeoff, wondering how many more times he would have to prove who he was.